Hi, so it's almost an article of faith, I'd say, in jazz education, jazz theory kind of circles, that the scale should always match the chord, and that is really, really bad if you play a major seventh on a dominant chord. Right, so today, with a little bit of help from this guy, I'm going to show that not only is that a myth, but actually these things can sound incredibly hip. So I'd like to start today with a little lick from Now's the Time, the solo Charlie Parker plays on that tune, and it comes right at the end of his solo. It sounds like this. Now this one was picked out by a student of mine, and he said this sounds really cool because it sounds like instead of going down it's kind of going up. It's got this climbing quality to it. It sounds really cool to me as well. I'm just going to play it now with the original chords so you can hear how it sounds against them. So what's so interesting about this particular line? If I play the first bit, it's not that interesting, it's just an F major scale. But strongly outlining the 1, 3 and 5 of the F major chord, the triad notes. Same sort of thing with the G minor. We've got passing second in there, but aside from that it's all chord tones. And then this thing. Now, this is against a C7, but we have the notes here of an E triad, and depending how you look at it, it's either a passing tone going to the notes of F major, 5 and 3, that D, passing tone, or it could be an E7 chord. I think both interpretations of that are completely valid. This sounds really cool against the C7, and yet this shouldn't, because the line contains the B natural, and that is the major 7th against C7, so it doesn't really fit the chord. But I want to show you that this sounds really cool against the original backing by improvising some lines using this idea. So why does it sound good? It's very simple, really. It's guitar logic, I suppose. We're just doing that. We're kind of moving up a half step, we use a triad. And the thing about this C7 is it's on what we call the weak side of the beat. It's on the back end of the bar on beat 3 and 4, right? So that means it's essentially just a passing chord. It doesn't really have a harmonic identity of its own. It's just, I'm going to F major. So you have the G minor, which is doing its thing, setting us up, and then you've got this, which could be really anything, as long as it sets us up to go to F major, right? So that's kind of the logic. Now the other thing is, if we look at the way the notes inside the E7 chord move to the F major, most of them go up a half step, all the triad notes do, and then the other note, which is the, sorry, that one, D stays the same into F6, right? So that's an effective cadence, and actually you would often play lines that have semitones below the chord if you're soloing. So you can understand that particular cadence, the E7 moving to F, as being an extension of that principle, right? And in a sense, the C7 going to F major is doing the same thing. You've got the 7th of the C7 chord going to the 3rd of the F, and the 3rd of the C7 chord going to the root of the F major, or maybe downwards towards the 6th. And then if you had a flat 9, you've got the flat 9 going to the 5th of the next chord, and so on. So we often add chromatics in to intensify the sound of the dominant anyway, but the dominant is basically doing that. It's kind of going resolve into the next chord. From that point of view, the E major or E7 is doing exactly the same thing, just in a different way. One creation myth for this weird chord that we can have is from the Barry Harris system. And this is when you get a G7 going to a C major of some kind, right? And we use something called the G dominant scale, which is really just the Mixolydian mode, if you know what that is, the G Mixolydian, right? And within this scale there are 7 chords, so G major, 1 for each step, A minor, B diminished, C major, and then we have D minor, E minor, and then F, and then back to G again, right? So of these, Barry Harris terms 3 of these the important chords. The first one is obviously G, that is quite important. The second one is incredibly useful, that's a D minor. If we can relate any minor scale we like to that, so it could be melodic minor, minor 6th diminished, harmonic minor, and these create all these cool sounds. But if you want to find out more about that, I've got a video. So the third important chord is perhaps less well known, and that is the F over G, which creates a sus sound. West Montgomery used it a whole load. Now, something interesting happens if we take a tritone substitution of that, which is like D flat 7, D flat 13, in this case going to C major. Okay, this is a very bebop sound. We're enriching the sound with lots of added chromatic half steps which create those interesting resolutions I was talking about a minute ago. So with this D flat scale now, on the D flat 7 chord, we now have 3 new important chords. And the first one's D flat major, which sounds absolutely brilliant if you put it over a G bass. Great little sub for a G7 altered chord there. We can also use, and this one's quite important, the A flat minor. So if you use, for instance, A flat melodic minor. You can use any minor scale you want again. So the third important chord is quite unexpected, and that's the B. So if I put B over G, it sounds like that going to C major. Strong resolution, but that has the F sharp in it, which is the major 7th over the G7 chord. It kind of works because it resolves. So if I play, this is the G7 without an F sharp, it resolves very nicely to C major, okay? Despite the stern prohibitions you might have heard from jazz educators. So for instance, I can walk down from the D flat down to the 7th like that using this little half step. And then go up the B major triad there. B's at the top, which makes it an arpeggio in Barry Harris language. And then just like the Charlie Parker line, we resolve to the C major. So and there's loads of these things that I can play, and it's part of my playing, really, part of my language. I don't really think about it too much. I'm using major 7ths there as well. They work very nicely. The triads and the chords, which is a triad with the first note repeated up the octave, all sound great and are all brilliant things to try out.
See, what's interesting is the arpeggio that's found on, you know what, the arpeggio that's found on the 7th of the F sharp 7. To play it against C7, it has, like the C7 has a B flat and the arpeggio has a B natural. That's pretty.
There's another Croatian myth I'd just like to share with you very quickly, which is how we relate this to the diminished chord. So for instance, you may have played this kind of turnaround, which is, you know, F sharp, diminished, and then C major, and then maybe 6, 2, 5, 1, you know. Very common in Dixieland trad music. You also get it in the bebop blues, for instance, in Now's the Time, you get this. So it went a little bit out of fashion in the bebop era, but you still get it. Now, one thing I learned early on playing trad music is that you can sub that for an E7. So instead of going B flat major, B diminished, and then, you know, F/C or whatever, you can go E7, half step below, F major, and then back to 6th, and so on, right? And in C major it worked like this, so a B7 going to C. Sounds really cool. So you can also use it to sub for that as well. In this case, we're using not the major 7th or the major triad as I did in the last, but we're actually using the 7th. So if I play that on a 251, you'll hear what it sounds like. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you find that interesting, fun, and above all, liberating. I'll see you on the next video.